Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of This, That, and the Other. I'm your host, Magic, and this is episode 5 of season 5. And today's guest is jc1796. So we'll hear from him momentarily. But before we get going, wanted to talk about a few things real quick, and that is that the baseball season's coming up. And so what that means is right around the corner is football season. So it won't be long before the TTATO Fantasy Football League generates again, and we'll have our draft sometime in August. I'll get some info from those who participated last year to find out who all's coming back. And if any openings do occur or become available, I will let you guys know on the message board on that on a thread titled TTATO Yahoo Fantasy Football League, and we'll fill those on a first come, first serve basis. So, did want to put that out there because I have had several folks ask about the possibility of making two leagues or expanding this one. I think we've got 16 players in the league currently, and if the interest swells to where it warrants, pairing some of those off into a separate league or generating another league altogether, that's something we may do. But after this season, we'll have a better idea of how that's working out. So just wanted to put that out there for the folks that know we do that every year. And also, I had a question about the upcoming release of What If Sports Gridiron Dynasty 4.0, for lack of a better term. And I don't know anything new. So essentially, the information that we had made available to everybody back about 6-8 months ago, still current to my knowledge. I did reach out to Jordan from customer service several months ago, who said that they will announce when that release is pending, what that release will actually entail. Not to be a guarantee that it's a whole new revamp and be a totally different type of game, but any type of major updates, he will definitely let us know, and we'll get that word out to you here on TTATO as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on our guest, and that is jc1796. Welcome aboard, brother.
Hey, thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Magic Man. Appreciate it. I see we've got the baseball caps and the gray goatees going, so that's a perfect thing. So we're aligned there. Thanks for having me, my friend.
Man, I tell you what, I bet you the vast majority of the folks playing this game that are of the age group that we're in, and,
100%.
have that goatee going for them.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm sure there's some young bucks out there with the solid black goatee.
Yeah. Mine ain't been black for a long time.
Well, JC, as I do with every show, I let the guys or ladies introduce themselves, kind of give us a little background about who you are, where you are, what brought you to What If Sports, how you got your name, all those sort of things. So go ahead at your convenience.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So you can call me JC, which is short for John Campbell. So I'm actually in Arizona. Was born and raised in the Phoenix area, and I'm currently residing in. This is not my house. That's not my Steinway baby grand behind me. But I'm currently in our place in northern Arizona, which is a little colder than Phoenix. So kind of enjoying it right now as Phoenix is getting warmer. It's going to be like 105 out in the Phoenix area now. So, yeah, how did I get into GD? I think it's been, so I looked, and it was 2012 when I joined. And I think I think Google was a thing, right? Magic. I think I just Googled, a sim. I've been in several sim leagues. So I just Googled a sim league, and I found GD. Actually, before I was in GD, I was actually in what's the basketball? Hard. I can't remember the name of the basketball.
Hoops, Dynasty Hoops.
Hoops, yeah, Hoops Dynasty. I was in there for a little while, did the Hoops thing, and I was terrible. I mean, really, really bad. So then I thought I tried the GD version, and I got hooked. I picked up a little team. I think Curry College in D3, and I was playing for quite a while. So that's how I really got into it. Just Googled it and got to know some of the folks there. ironically, a lot of the people that were there in 2012 when I were there are still like yourself,
Yeah.
are still around with our gray
Still plodding
goatees.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed your 11-year anniversary was about a week ago. I
Oh, is
think
that right?
April 16th is when you came on board back in 2012, and in that
That's
time,
funny.
you've amassed 6 CCs, no national championship yet, but you do have a 700 plus winning percentage. So
Yeah.
kudos for that. That's not easy to do.
Oh, I'll tell you what, that I was in the Natty one year. I think it was in D1 AA with Southern Baton Rouge, and I think my memory is not what it used to be. I think I was playing another human in that conference in Texas Southern, and so he and I were conference mates, right? We subbed out all year, and he and I were both in that Natty, and oh man, it was close, but I didn't pull it off. So I'm hoping this time around I can make that happen.
Yeah. Well, like we said on the previous show, everybody remembers that first one. And I actually, speaking of which, I actually had somebody ask me how I could say, you always remember that first one, and then I couldn't remember what team I had. No, that was me being sarcastic and funny. I know good and well. Matter of fact, I mentioned it later, Endicott. I know good and well it was Endicott. I mean, it was Super V 97, I think, had set that team up. And then when he left, all I had to do was renew the annual subscription. It pretty much did its own thing.
No, that's
Won a
nice.
national championship. And so, yeah, that first one is it's something to remember and to cherish. You pursue the next one every season, regardless. To me, it seems like, I'm always looking for that next one. But I find myself here lately just exploring, doing, a little bit of things differently, because I find myself looking at my game plans or my playbooks and I'm like, man, I've run this forever. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Why did I start doing this? What
Mm-hmm.
happens if I change it up? And that sometimes it costs you a win here or there. You, as far as having a team, you've got Albion right now in Division 3, I believe. And do you find that having that playbook there at Division 3 is a little easier for you than at the upper divisions, or do you prefer the more complex playbook?
Yeah, so my the reason I jumped back into GD, I think so. Albion is my wife's alma mater out in Michigan, right? So it was a D3, and I can't remember if I was able to jump into a higher division based on my history. I can't remember, but I'm like, what, I'm going to jump back in. I'll tell you why I left. Quite a few years ago, but I jumped back in to Albion. And I wanted to do baby steps because I couldn't remember everything about it. It's funny when you step away for a few years, you just forget. So I forgot a lot of things. I reached out to you, posted some things on the forum about questions, because I just simply forgotten. I mean, I've coached every division. I've coached. I've coached Notre Dame for a number of seasons.
Wow,
so I was playing pretty much at the pinnacle, but I couldn't remember. And then, and the reason I left was because the Yahtzee tool stopped working for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And that's when I left. I think a few people left because it was so hard to recruit without it.
Yeah. And the blessing that we have now, of course, is Ebb's tool that he's made available to everybody, the recruit analysts and the game analyzer. I mean, that in of itself has kept so many people playing this game. And I know I speak for a lot of people when I say that, because I know me, for one, I'm running, I think, 8 teams right now, and there's no way in hell I can manage that many teams if it weren't for his tools. So
you're a maniac.
Listening, reach out to him and give him your thanks, and don't forget to hit that pay button on his or the donate button on that website of his. The same with Bob. 2 great tools that we have that we're blessed with is that GD reports and Ebb's tool as well, because combining, none of those tools do everything that you need,
right?
So you really have to make them work the way it best suits you. Have it work so that you can do what you want to do or need to do with the tools that are at your disposal. And there's a couple people that do things differently. I know I do it different than some others, and there's even more folks out there that don't use those tools, have their own that they haven't shared, and don't need to. I'm a proponent for nobody has to share anything. That's you do what you want to, but at the same time, there's people like Bob and Ed that really go out of their way and give people something for the few measly donations that they do get, but it's well appreciated, definitely. How much do you rely on his tools?
When I came back right away, I did exactly what you were just talking about. I reached out to Bob and donated to the guest reports because I don't know. I think most of us get done with recruiting. We're like, oh, how did I do?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then we go look at, we wait with bated breath until the day after recruiting ends and Bob's reports, the guest reports pop up and then Ed was super helpful because I'm on a Mac, so I play the game on a Mac.
Yeah.
Well, I'm like, I guess I can't use the tool because I'm on a Mac. And Ed's like, let me see what I can do. So I think a couple of days later, he's like, hey, give it a shot. You try to see if this works, and it worked. It worked great. So he may not want to admit it and support it, but it's working on my Mac, and it's maybe not as easy as it is on a PC, but it worked great. And although it's not like Yotzer's tool in that Ed's is one way, right? So you can bring stuff in from G. Right. You can't do actions from it, right? So you have to still go get in G to do the actions. But it's for me, it's so much worth it. I jump back in, like I mentioned, with Albion. There might have been a couple of adult beverages involved when I decided decision to jump back in. But I realized I'm like, wow, this is a lot of work. I got to make spreadsheets and those types of things. But it was really great. Both those gentlemen, a good shout out to them. And I'd encourage anyone who's using those tools to even throw a couple bucks. I mean, it's
exactly
whatever you're going to pay for a soda or a breakfast sandwich or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I jokingly I told my wife a while back. I said, there's casino we frequently, or I should say two that we frequent quite often. And, if I had taken the money I spent in those casinos and donated it to Ed and Bob, they'd be gone from What If Sports. They'd be in
the Bahamas.
They'd be so rich, they'd be out of here. So
right.
But yeah, I'm with you. Everybody who uses those tools should be able to contribute in good faith because it's a valuable tool. And we said it before with the GD reports. The data that he supplies or that report supplies is not an indication of the future national championship. It's just a snapshot look at the here and now and how you did to gauge what you expected to do, mm-hmm. And the recruit analyzer or the game analyzer, those tools are more data pertinent based on the continued day-to-day operation of the game. You use them every day. Like you said, with the GD reports, we use it, when the recruiting period's over, we rush over there to see if it's refreshed and get that data. And then I don't look at it again until I'm either changing teams and I want to see kind of how the previous coach managed that team when it comes to recruiting, kind of get an indication of what that roster is made of, other than what If Sports provides you. But with the analyzer and the tools that Ev has, it's amazing. You one-click button and you can see every coach that's human within a geographic area of a particular recruit you're looking at or a player. I mean, that's phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Those are minor things that are part of the game that the game doesn't provide, that provide maximum information.
Right.
A little bit of effort from a user's point and click, and you get a vast knowledge of information. It's phenomenal. So hats off to those guys and anybody else out there that's doing mm-hmm. that as well. Yeah. Now, as far as you mentioned being at the top, and then starting off back at the bottom. That I believe, because I left for a period about that time that Yatzer's tool was no longer working or dropped down to a minimal team. I can't recall exactly, but I recall there's been some updates to the program since then. I know that Sebel and I worked on the color coordinating and the letter identifying for the potential to be displayed right there on the screen now on the page, and some of those things. But from a gameplay, did you notice anything new, or did something pop out that you didn't recall from the previous time you were here?
Nothing. I've talked to a couple guys. I'm assuming they're guys who did the same thing. They kind of jumped back in after a break for a while, and they said the engine was a lot different than, and they weren't expecting the things that were happening in their gameplay. But for me, I haven't really noticed a whole lot. But then again, I'm in D3. You're kind of handicapped, obviously, right?
Sure.
With what you can do in your game planning. And like, for example, I had a running back who's a really great D3 running back. He's a senior this year, so I'm gonna miss him next year. But I wanted to when I run the I form, I wanted to have a really good blocking back, so to block for him. Well, in D3, there's no way you can. So your RB2, whoever's your second RB in your depth chart, is going to be that fullback in the I form, and in other formations too. So you don't have that that minutia of control to say, look, this is my fullback, and when I'm running I form, this is the back I want to play. But otherwise, I want this other back to be my second string back. When, so you don't really have that minutia of. And I was surprised that, because I hadn't played D3 in forever, I was really surprised that I'm not gonna say they dumbed it down, but they kind of did, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember they did that, and the developers wanted to make sure that it wasn't too daunting for new players to come in.
Exactly. Correct.
Try to make it easy. So jumping into D3 and candidly not knowing if I wanted to stick around for a while, but now I'm hooked again, and I think I've got a big time unbalanced class here at Albion that I didn't even realize. Like I said, there might have been a couple adult beverages involved when I picked that school, but the next morning the realization came in that I had two back-to-back classes, one with like 17 and one with like 22 or 23,
right? Yeah,
back-to-back, and I just missed it, right? So I had the really small classes. So next year, this coming season, I'm in Leahy, will be the freshman class that I drafted will be seniors. So I'm expecting to be a little better than I was this past season.
That's one of the things I look at too. When I'm moving up to a different team, for whatever reason, look at that class and see if it's something that I'm willing to take on, or look at the formation IQ. If I'm looking to stair step a program and go to the next level, I may not really care too much about the balance or what formations they run, because I'm only going to be there for a year, maybe two at the most. But if I'm planning to stick around, that plays a factor in it. I know there's some coaches out there, it doesn't matter what formation IQ, they have success regardless. But others like me, you've got to have every advantage possible. You've got to have the high formation IQ. You've got to have the quality guys on the team if I'm going to have any chance whatsoever. And it just takes one of those to skew off to one side, and you tank a season. So what about rebuilds? You've got Albion, which is pretty much a rebuild for you, not necessarily the team, but for you, because you're basically putting your feet back into it and trying to get back to the way you were before. When it comes to a rebuild, is there something specifically that you can recall looking for that makes that team attractive?
I think when I reflected back about picking up a team and Albion, I felt like it was there were no expectations on me. Coaching coaching an elite, especially Notre Dame and the Big Ten is just so much work.
Yeah.
I'm sure you, Magic, and the people that are watching this that have in the past are still, run an elite. It's almost a full-time job. You got a game plan for every single game. You got you got Ohio State. You've got there's other maybe three other elites in the Big Ten, and then the ones the non-elites are coached by just fantastic coaches, and
Exactly.
and it took so much time. So when I came back, I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a team that's bad, and Albion historically has been terrible. They're right in the middle of D3 in the the Midwest. So there's a bunch of colleges right around them. And so I looked, and in the world, Leary, I don't think they've ever even advanced past maybe the second round, which is pretty crazy for an unbalanced team, because you'd think even a sim could take them pretty far, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of did it because the pressure's off. I don't feel the need to have to win a natty right away, but I am looking forward to the time when I've got full red shirts going on those unbalanced teams, and my big class is seniors, and my next big class is juniors. I think, despite my coaching, I think that those teams should be pretty good.
Well, there's some coaches out there who've done that, kind of similar to what you're doing with Albion, is take over a team that has been, a historic cellar dweller, and then in a matter of 2, maybe 3 years, get fed up and say, "God, I suck at this game. I do okay against the Sims. When I come up against humans, I'm getting blown out. I don't know what I'm doing wrong." Well, the reality is that in those instances, more times than not, it's not a matter of that coach doing anything wrong. It's the fact that he took a team that's a perennial cellar dweller, and they don't have that vision, to get those upper echelon guys within that division on his team. So he's recruiting his high guys, the ones that he thinks are studs in his recruiting class, are the mid-level guys in some of these teams who have gotten those 40 plus wins in 3 years. So when you're pulling in those mid-tier recruits and you're a struggling coach, you're not expected to have a lot of success when those other teams who have been around for a while with tremendous success are pulling in those sub D1 AA player or D2 players at D3, for instance. So to those people, I say, be patient. If you really want to test your mettle to see whether what you do on your team is impactful to success, don't take a team that's been a cellar dweller. Get the upper echelon teams that are available that are already primed to go, and see if you can keep them from becoming a cellar dweller. If you're having success, then maybe now you've gotten a better understanding of the game, then maybe get that second or third team and do that experimentation with the rebuild. I like doing rebuilds, but I've realized I don't have the patience anymore. I don't necessarily, and this is going to sound bad, but I don't necessarily, try to win a national championship. It's not like, I can snap my fingers and go get one, but that is not my goal year in and year out. It's usually to see if that recruiting class that I think is so, shit hot materializes by the time they're seniors. And so it takes 4 years to really give me the data I need to tell me if my recruiting strategy or my cores that I look for or whatever are in fact paying off. And a lot of the guys that come on brand new to this don't realize that this game does take 4, 5, 6, 7 years before you truly get a grasp of it. You've been here. You're coming back. You've expressed that it's a bit of a challenge still. So I can only imagine, what you faced.
Well, I mean, and too, if you think about it, if you grab a really cruddy sim team like I did, then you've got the 4 seasons right before your recruits but you remember the recruits that you recruited when maybe your first year in, you had really bad vision, so you couldn't get the best people. I personally, my first class, didn't stray too far away from home. I wanted because I couldn't remember exactly. Now I recruit nationally, right? So now I'll grab people. I'll get more than the amount of scholars that I got to fill. I'll get them green. Then I can go out and explore and try and pull some people in, knock some sims off, that type of thing. But you got to remember, so that's 4 seasons. But if you have a sim team, then you have all those red shirts that you didn't have, right? So you're red shirting, and sims don't red shirt, right? So now you're behind the 8 ball that way too. So yeah, to your point, it's going to take 7-8 seasons. But you have to realize you're kind of in it for the long haul, which is why I'm doing this. And this is not going to be this past season. We're in the playoffs and Leahy, and so I won 10 games, but it's not my next year, and the following year will be the big classes. So I'm hoping for a deep playoff run. And I still, I think I have another, let's see. So it'll be next year. I won't have any red shirts, but the following season, those red shirts will start hitting and they'll start cycling every season too. So yeah, to your point, if I'm just starting playing, I'm going to grab a coach that just left and maybe moved up the division or something like that. So I can get that instant gratification because it sucks having to slog through a few seasons, knowing you kind of know what you're doing, but the results aren't there. And heck, I got beat by a sim this past season too, so it's painful.
I took over and I don't remember which league it was in, but I took over a struggling SMU team. So being where they're located, there's no way in hell I'm getting the upper echelon recruits to begin with. And I think this is either my first or second year with them. And, when it comes to coaching against another coach, game planning, I feel more confident than I do going up against sims with this particular team. Normally it's not like that, but I've lost to like 4 sims this year. And it's, just the fact that the sim runs is pretty much the same game day in and day out. But regardless, my team is just not at the place where it can routinely just thump a sim team. So, you hope like hell you run up against a coach that one either screws up or has just a terrible game plan so that you can take advantage of it and walk away with a lucky win against a
I tell you what, yeah, you're right. And nothing's worse than losing to a sim, and they're unpredictable. I found, if you, I'll just throw a number. If you aren't 40 or 50% better than on paper, just your team, than a sim, you better watch out because you'll get some really unexpected results. And I don't know if it's an engine thing. I don't, and I don't think many people game plan for a sim, right? Because they play the same formations and those types of things. But yeah, if you're not significantly better, you be careful because you'll look at halftime and you're like, what in the world is happening here? Yeah.
And some of those sims have some really good talent. It's amazing when you look at it, and I know I have doing my game planning. I've looked at some of the opponents, and I'm like, holy crap! His quarterback is head and shoulders above mine, and he's been a sim for 30 years.
And he wasn't redshirted either, right? That's what
exactly. He's a natural 4-year quarterback.
Yeah, I had a really good running back. I think you saw him. I had a really good running back, and he was top 5, in D3, the sim recruited running back, and never redshirted. It's just it's the dynamics different. I think it's sim versus humans, and I'm really happy. We just got a new coach in my division, who really both. There's 3 human coaches in my division, and the 2 other ones are really, really good coaches. So I'm looking forward to the battles over the year and that type of thing.
Yeah, I learned to make my mistakes when I'm in a conference by myself. Like this, an endeavor where you're trying out a new formation or trying new schemes or whatever the case may be. You don't want to do that when you're in a full conference because you know you go in every week or every night and get your head beat in by a human coach. If they're established team. But if you've got an established team or semi-established team, and you have the luxury of being able to experiment a little bit, going up those sims, you can go against a sim with a really good human coach team, and you being the coach, and you can experiment a little bit and still get the win, but not when you're mid-level or lower human coach team going up against a sim. There can be some opportunities for upsets there. So the
Yeah.
guys coming in, don't just take a sim for granted because they'll sneak up and bite you. That's for sure. I know I've got battle wounds from some sim bites.
Well, when during recruiting, when you get that past that first cycle, and you go and there's players with 3 sims on them, right?
Yeah.
And there's somebody you want, and I think the common knowledge is, and the common belief is, you got to knock if you want that player, you got to get those sims off of that player
Yes.
fast because they constantly put effort into those players. But you think about all the sims out there that players out there that have 3 sims on them. People are like, oh, I don't want to put in the effort to knock those sims off, or maybe I'm knocking sims off of these other 3 players. So that they'll get good players, and they'll be good players like we said without red shirts. So it's I mean, in probably in I don't know as I stick with Albion. In a couple seasons, I won't care about sims, right? So once I get to the point where I don't have to sweat them anymore, and there's an automatic W for me as I'm doing it, then I won't worry about it. But man, taking up the rebuilds with a pretty bad team, you gotta watch yourself.
Yeah, and there's times when you've got a team that is so well put together and established that your challenge is not to beat a sim; it's to see if you can score 100 on them,
Right.
or put triple digits on there. How many sim games in a row can you put triple digits on somebody?
Right.
And but for me, the most part is, can I win first and foremost, and how much playing time can I get my underclassmen in this game? So that's the big thing for me, is not necessarily looking back at the end of the season and going, oh, yeah, I led the league in points scored. Who gives a rat? Your freshmen are sitting there with a negative work ethic because they're not playing. And that's key. You got to get those guys' work ethic. Mm-hmm. Is there a way that you structure? I know you're at D3 right now, which limits that opportunity. But if you can recall at the upper levels, is there a particular fashion that you're willing to share on how you are able to get some of those underclassmen playing time without sacrificing too much in the competitive edge?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So to your point, right? If you're playing a sim, you realize you can give those underclassmen, some nice PT. You can mess with the fatigue setting, which will, if you turn it down, then your backups will get some more time. This year, I was shuttling quarterbacks, so every halftime I'd shuffle a quarterback to get because I had 2 underclassmen quarterbacks. I'd shuffle them, and then I'd shuffle my 2 backup running backs too. So that would just be, I'd go into the depth chart and just do that. But I think fatigue was the number one thing, and then I tend to recruit with a floor of work ethic. So I guess I don't know you say the number, but there's a certain work ethic that I won't look at anyone before.
Exactly. Yeah, same here.
Yeah, so there's a certain work ethic I look for. You can hit me up if somebody wants to know what that is. And there's also I look for potential too. But here the funny thing is there's no so very high and high potentials. I mean, everybody goes after those, so including me. But if you don't get them the playing time, they'll never hit that potential.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you have to make sure. So there's really no advantage if you have somebody who's high or very high, if you can't get into the playing time, they'll never beat somebody who's just average.
Mm-hmm. And
So
another coach that I talked with, his strategy was, and I'll share this. He said that he didn't mind, and it's something that I've used in the past too. And it comes into using, especially if you run your primary formation, which is peak offense. You're using a pro set. That is your dominant primary. That's the only one you practice for. You run that, and then you've got your game plan set up to where, at the start of the second quarter, 15 minutes to go in the game. If you're losing by one, or if you're winning by one, or if the game is tied, you've got this other formation that you run, and you don't even have to practice it, because the whole point of running it is you're so far ahead that you're not going to, come out on the losing end. But at the same time, you can use that formation to play your freshmen.
right.
And, start them in those positions and get them in there. The other thing is you can mix that in throughout the normal game too. If you've got a strong enough team where you can compensate for, having that other formation in there from time to time. The one thing I like to do is I call it my preseason formation. And that's the one I use during exhibitions. And it's the one I use whenever I'm, I'm winning by, X number of points in with 15 minutes to go, X number of points with a certain number to go, all the way down through those four options. And when those marks hit, that's when that in the second and fourth quarter, that's when that preseason formation kicks in. And that preseason consists of all those scrub players. So, you can set it up to do what you need to do to get those players in there. And like I said, you can do it 15 minutes winning by 1, 11 minutes winning by 10 or whatever. I think I used 15 minutes winning by 1 and 15 minutes losing by 1. That was for a different game set. That was for a different defense and offense, depending on the situation in the game. Like if you're up against a coach who does kind of like what I do and run a different offense from time to time in the second quarter, that's how you make that accommodation as well. So you can be prepared for that defensively. But back to getting freshmen playing time, that's always key. You cannot, like you said, you can use the substitution rate. Leave that at 95%, and that quarterback 2 or 3 plays is going to come out of the game. Your freshman's going to go in until, he's refreshed, the starter's refreshed, and especially if you've only got 2, which you shouldn't have, but if you've only got 2. And so there's a variety of ways, and those folks that want more info on that, you're more than welcome to reach out to me or some of the others, because I know there's folks out there willing to share that. And a lot of it's not a secret. A lot of it's on the forum.
Sure.
You just have to know how to query the advanced, search, because God forbid you put one wrong letter or one wrong word in your search queue, and man, you come up with all kind of crazy stuff out there. But it's on the board. I always encourage everybody to go.
It's not rocket science. I think there's a lot out there. If you just spend some time, and I mean, don't be afraid. I've reached out to you over the years, Magic and other folks, and there's a lot of guys that have been playing this for a long time, and I mean, everybody's happy to help. But I was intrigued by something you brought up earlier, which was the people that are kind of pushing the envelope on the engine, trying to see, where's a, I'm not gonna say a flaw, but where's some coding in the engine that I can exploit. And one of those that I saw recently was some folks, I think Harris has been playing forever, does this too. Yeah. Where they don't play quarterbacks, right? They play, and they don't, and I don't draft tight ends either, but they don't draft tight ends, they don't draft quarterbacks, and then they just and their running backs play quarterback, and their tight ends are offensive linemen, which makes sense to me. If you're playing, you're playing a wishbone or an I-form or something like that, where you're run heavy. I mean, you don't care if you don't throw your tight end. Why do you care about how he catches the ball? What his receiving is? Yeah. So I see things like that going on, and people that have teams in multiple worlds, like yourself, like MFN Myers, right? I think he's got a D3 team in every St. Olaf in every world that there is. But the people that are experimenting like that, I think those are the ones who, who can figure out, what the engine does. And so I guess what I'm saying is, read the forums, get an understanding of the game, but don't be afraid to experiment and try new things, because not everybody's got this figured out. And I'm trying some different things, and I just got to get my vision up.
Yeah, and that's the big thing with everybody. Yeah. Well, unless you're at D1, there is no vision limit at D1.
Yeah, right.
At the same time, there's cojones. If you're at Buffalo, do you have the cojones to challenge a Penn State for a guy 10 miles from college? No, I'm not going there.
Yeah, that's smart.
Got a big advantage, but even though I can see him, he's in my vision. I know better to try to tap him to come to my school.
Right. Yeah, there's I think a lot of people's advice is, if you're recruiting, is, especially if you're starting out, is not to battle. And I think that's smart. If you're gonna battle, try and battle early. You hear horror stories about people that coaches that'll go in there and will wake up at, I don't know, god awful hour, 4 o'clock in the morning, and try and knock off, try and take your recruits at the last or the second to last cycle before signing. But I think that's definitely the exception there than the rule. I don't know many people that have done that, and I've never experienced that happening either. So I think if you have to battle, if somebody that you love and you've got a distance advantage, that knocks it into the other tier, right? The 180, 360 tier. Mm-hmm. I'd battle for them if they're good, but then you got to think about, especially in D1, if you're battling an elite or something like that, that's you got to figure that out. And then the D1 AA thing, where you can, where those after the last recruiting cycle, when some of those D1 guys will drop down to D1 AA, and you can get them. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of little tricks, obviously, but for me, kind of jumping back into it, I'm sure there's some folks on this that are jumping back into it as well. Just be patient; it'll come back. You'll remember things. They'll come back to you. Yeah, like I like to say, getting back into this game is like riding a bicycle. You know how to do it, you just won't ride it straight. Until you figure it out. You're going to wobble just a bit until you get it all squared away again. But the one thing I really like is that it speaks to the draw of the game when people come back. Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that when people leave, there's a pretty good chance you're going to see them again later on down the road, because the game does have something that's appealing, and it's so diverse, and there's so many different components of it and aspects to the various parts of the playbook, the game planning, the camaraderie, the playoffs, the recruiting, all of that there's got to be something that every one of us really truly see as their most favorite part of the game. For me, it's recruiting. What about you? Same. Yeah, same. Recruiting. I think that's the junkie smack that keeps us all coming back, right? Is that recruiting? I've played Madden. It's been a few years, but I played, Madden on the Xbox or the PS or the PlayStation series, right? And playing the career mode there, it's fun because players progress and all that, just like this. But it takes up so much time, right? So it's an arcade game. You have to play the game. So for me, I love Judy because it's set and forget, right? So you go, you set up your gameplay and set everything up, and then you watch the results, and you can make halftime adjustments and those types of things, but you're not glued in front of your TV for 5 hours a day playing it, right? So that's the appeal to me. I think it's you get all the strategy part, but not all the arcade thing. Yeah, and the other part too that I like is the flexibility of it. Like you said, you're not sitting in front of the TV. Mm-hmm. My wife and I recently went to Cancun, and
I was sitting on the beach recruiting in Cancun, and that's something, that you couldn't do, 20 years ago or so
Right.
with the confidence that you can now. But with all of the applications that are out there, as far as, being able to get the internet on your phone, on your laptop, on your tablet, whatever the case may be. And one of the improvements that are forthcoming, I'm sure, in the near future, I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't be, is an actual app for your phone or your smart device that allows you to interface with GD. I know that's been talked about quite a bit in the past, but I think that would open up the door to a more competitive game, because now you have coaches, like you said, some of them get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do that sneaky recruiting or whatever you want to call it. But the reality is, I have become cognizant of the fact that I don't put a lot of money or effort necessarily into the first 2, maybe even 3 recruiting cycles. I just kind of get some feelers out there, because the reality is some folks are at work. And, if you spent, God knows how much effort on a recruit to knock 3 sims off, and you're in Alabama's backyard, and the Alabama coach has been working hard all day and hadn't had the opportunity to get on. And now, it's 6, 7 o'clock at night. He's getting to do his initial recruiting after he has already set things up. He's getting to see his first results and make some effort. How hard is it for an Alabama team to take a player from, SMU that they knock 3 recruits off?
Right.
So you waste your money doing that. So I caution folks, take your time. Don't get overly aggressive in those first 2 or 3 cycles, because there are people out there that they're not sitting around lurking and waiting for you to identify who you want and then take it from you. It's just they're not able to do it. They're driving a bus or flying an airplane or working the kitchen or out on an ambulance. Who knows? They just don't have the luxury that some folks do to be able to stop and, take a restroom break and look at their phone and get on and make some changes or make some recruiting efforts. So
yeah,
folks out there need to be aware of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I never really thought about that. I kind of I really attacked that first cycle just mainly just with AC scouts, right? Just to kind of see the lay of the land, and ideally, I like to get a bunch of people green right away, so I can feel confident I'm not going to take on any sims, right? And that enables me to spread my search out nationally, which is what I've been doing here, now that I've been out in Albion. So, but yeah, I think it'd be a great thing if there was a way that they could generate that app. And then, I think if they could, they've done some of what Yotzer and Bob have done. It was really amazing when I saw that they actually incorporated the guest report, the calculations, right, into the game itself. So I hope they look at what third parties are doing and roll it into the game itself.
Yeah, and you're talking about the position roles,
right?
Those weighted numbers that you put into each of those categories. Yeah, that was one of the rollouts from an update years ago that really made a difference between D3 and the upper echelons, because at D3 it's set. And then you get to the others. Now you can adjust those numbers. And like you said, mirror them for what Bob has. And there's no secret to what his formula is, or, tailor them to be more like with what you need. And again, once the app comes out, like we were talking about with the guy or the lady who's, working their butt off during the day, instead of trying to get online and, activate the browser and do all that stuff, it takes, much less time if you've got an app that you're doing that with. And, like I said, the game's going to become more competitive in my mind in that regard. And speaking to the fact of the heavy load up front, what I've learned to do is initially years and years ago, I'd put out my certain amount of AC scouts. And then, invariably 3 cycles later, the guys I had green or was yellow with another sim or whatever, poof, they're gone to some, better quality team instantaneously.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of doing what I mistakenly did then, which was dump more money on these guys in that second cycle,
Mm-hmm.
I've now spooled back somewhat and realized that, if I put an AC scout on somebody and it happens to turn an undecided green, or, I get a second cycle look at this guy and I've dumped money on him to turn him green. Instead of doing that now, I'll put out more AC scouts in that first cycle, because I know that here in 2 or 3 cycles, some of those guys I'm counting on are going to be non-players for me, because better schools are going to be able to take those guys. And when they do, now is when I would be sending out those additional ACs, because I'd have more alternative.
Yep.
So by doing it on the front end, I actually save a cycle in recruiting by having that information early on in the game. So I don't mind sharing that bit of wisdom. It's worked out well for me. I think in the last 3 recruiting classes I've had in various worlds, they've all been number 1 for guess. But again, that's a snapshot picture of the here and now. That doesn't tell you the fact that they were all very low, but they were in their best cores and they're never going to get better than they are today. That's why I got them.
Yeah, I do the same thing too, Magic. I my first cycle is those AC scouts, and then I just kind of sit tight and wait a little bit. I might throw 1 or 2 out there, because you're right. The landscape can change, and other coaches can jump on those, and there's no sense in spending any time or money or effort on trying to bring those folks on. So I do the same thing. I would encourage everyone to, if you start in your 360 and you've got close to your open Scullies green to you after the first maybe 2 or 3 cycles, man, just it's expensive to go out and recruit nationally, but I've had even especially in the upper in D1 AA and D1 a lot of success going out and grabbing recruits from, I don't know, across the country. I mean, Hawaii, right? I mean, I've been able to pull good recruits from those areas. So you'll see. I think folks will see a lot about stay within your 360 or stay close to home. I mean, that maybe when you're starting out, that's okay, but it's a recipe for failure if you can't get out beyond that. Yeah, it's a national game, right? Just like real college football, right?
Yeah, exactly. You've got those hotbeds, and they change.
You got your pipeline.
Dynamic, so they change from time to time. We've talked about it before. Getting a D2 Humboldt on the West Coast, you've got pretty much that entire part of the country to yourself. But if no other coaches are up in the Northwest, but at the same time, you're going to have a drought here and there. And being out there, it's going to be more expensive than if you have a drought in certain areas and let's say you're from a school in Indiana. You've got more than just the east that you can go recruit in. You've got the north, the south, and the west that you don't have in Humboldt, other than Hawaii. So you really have to be aware of that as well. But there are people out there who swear by certain geographical locations, and you can tell by where they position or pick their teams and where they roost that's where they like it. And so many of the coaches that I'm making a reference to, you'll see them no matter what world you're in. They're up in Pennsylvania and New York. They know there's a million recruits, and if there's a million schools, you're still going to get a handful of good recruits out there, and they have success. So to anybody coming on new, I say try it out. Vary your location strategy. There's nothing wrong with taking a school out in the middle of nowhere. It'll teach you how to recruit. If nothing else, it will teach you how to recruit, and it'll help you better understand what it takes to get the recruits. What effort or about how much effort it takes to get recruits. So you'll be a little wiser with your money rather than having a bunch of people in your backyard and you're just constantly accustomed to throwing a little bit of dough at them and everything goes your way. That can come back to bite you as soon as a couple of humans move into that area.
Yeah, I was in D2 Western New Mexico. I did the same thing that you're talking about, Magic. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to a place where there's no human competition. There's nobody else out there recruiting. And so I grabbed Western New Mexico. I think that was my first D2 jump. And it was there were no humans out there, but all the good
schools out there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's funny. Yeah, that's right. But if you ever, I don't know if you've ever coached there, Magic, at Western New Mexico in D2.
Yeah, that area, yeah. There's a place is desolate.
There's Sims everywhere, and all the good players. It seemed to me like the coaches would they would take that distance and they would try and grab all the top recruits out there. So I never was really successful in those really remote areas. It sounds great, right? It sounds like, well, I've got disadvantage on everybody, but it was just
but there's only 2 recruits there.
I know. I know. You got a class you got to fill of 13 kids, and you've got 2, and you take on 11 Sims, right? So
yeah, and that I love the thought of coaching at my alma mater, but at ENMU there were too many times, I'd say probably 70% of the time when it came to recruiting, if there were 10 or 15 recruits per year within my 360 that were worth having, it was a blessed year. Most of the times you'd get the 3-4s, and I'm not talking positional, I'm talking across the board.
Wow.
And it wouldn't be surprised if one of them was a kicker.
Right,
like, man.
Yeah. When your 2 best recruits are a punter and a kicker, then it wasn't a great season for you.
That's true. Well, we're almost at the end of the hour that we normally run the show length. What advice would you give to somebody if you could share just one tip and one bit of advice, that golden nugget, with somebody who just signed on yesterday and said, John, what's the one thing I need to know to play this game and have success?
I'd say don't expect to be great overnight. Don't expect to pick up a team. You can have fantastic real life coaching skills, right?
Exactly.
You can understand formations all day long. You can understand tendencies. You know when to blitz, when not to blitz. But just be patient. It's a game that's going to test your mettle initially, and test your patience. But if you keep plugging away, and you make friends along the way, right? That's important. So this game's not about. It's not fun to play this game in a vacuum, right? You should reach out to people, post on the forums, talk to your conference mates, and just be patient. It's the longer you play and the better your teams become, the more addictive it is. And when you're starting to play for conference championships and you're starting to play for the playoffs, you're trying to make deep playoff runs, and then like I did, and you've done many times, all of a sudden you find yourself in a national championship game. I mean, that'll give you goosebumps. That'll
yeah.
I mean, you won't be able to sleep the night before. That's how excited you are when those things happen.
Yeah, exactly. My one bit of advice to a newcomer is leave your team behind and run. Do not take another bite of this addictive game. I've been playing since 2005, I think it is. So we're talking 18 years.
Wow.
It's a long time. So, John, thanks for coming on, brother. I appreciate it. And anytime the show's on, by all means, you have an open invite to pop in and join the show at any time, man. We love those repeat visitors, definitely.
Right. All right. I appreciate the invite too, Magic. And if anybody has any, I'm jc1796 on the in GD. If you want to drop me a site mail or hit me up, I'm fairly active in the forums too, because I'm trying to remember all this stuff. And I'll be playing in a natty in about 2-3 seasons. So yeah, feel free to hit me up.
Sounds good, brother. Again, thanks so much. We'll see you again.
You bet, my friend. Take care.